Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are taking on a really massive and specialized challenge. We're building the strategic playbook for you for a UK social worker role, specifically within an adults neighborhood team. And we're focusing on the unique demands of a rural area,
Mm.
somewhere like Somerset. So our mission today is really sharp. It's very targeted. We're not just covering the basics. We are going to dissect the essential components you need to show you have absolute sophisticated readiness for that interview panel. And that readiness, well, it really hinges on three integrated pillars: mastering the strengths-based approach, understanding and leveraging integrated care within the primary care network model, and of course, having a crystal clear command of your statutory legislation.
The at context is absolutely
Mhm.
key. You're not just applying for any social work job. You're applying to work inside a primary care network, a PCN.
Right.
And, for anyone who needs a quick definition, a PCN usually covers around 30 to 50,000 patients. It links several GP practices together.
Yeah.
The job here is about showing, how to co-locate, to integrate, and apply the law practically within that team structure.
Yep.
And often, dealing with the unique logistical demands of a rural area.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the absolute philosophical foundation.
Mhm.
Modern adult social work practice has moved so dramatically away from what we used to call the deficit model. So if we distill the philosophy, what is the strengths-based approach in practice, and why is this shift so vital?
Well, this shift is vital because that old deficit model, it just traps people in dependency. It only focuses on what a person can't do. It's just a list of their losses.
Right.
The strengths-based approach completely flips this. The core principle is focusing on what is working. You're utilizing a person's existing skills, their resilience, family networks, their community connections. It's all about building capacity.
So the ultimate goal is maximizing their independence.
Exactly. Maximizing independence, not simply receiving the maximum amount of paid care. A social worker needs to identify the person's assets. So, maybe they can't dress themselves anymore, but they're a fantastic cook and they have a strong network of friends. The care plan builds around those strengths, not just their physical losses.
That makes perfect sense for a long-term strategy, but what about when someone is in crisis or, just left the hospital? How do you operationalize that independence focus quickly?
That's where you bring in a really high-value operational term, reablement. If you are interviewing for a place like Somerset, you absolutely must mention this.
Right.
Reablement is this crucial short-term service. It's usually between 2 and 6 weeks, and the focus is all on recovery and regaining skills after a medical event, like a stroke or a serious fall.
So it's intensive.
It's very intensive, but the objective is crystal clear. Help the person recover their baseline skills. Making a cup of tea, walking to the bathroom, preparing a simple meal,
Oh.
all to prevent the immediate, expensive, and often unnecessary need for a long-term care package.
But doesn't that short time frame sometimes create anxiety for the service user? I mean, are you inadvertently pressuring them to rush their recovery just to pass the reablement period?
That is a highly insightful question, and it really speaks to the nuance of the role. You have to acknowledge that tension.
Hmm.
The social worker's job is to manage the expectation. You need to make sure the service user knows that reablement is a pathway to choice. If after 6 weeks they genuinely haven't regained function, well, that's documented and you move to a long-term assessment. But the ethical duty is to give them the best chance at recovery and choice first. It's about maximizing their potential, not hitting financial targets.
Okay, let's establish the guardrails now. This is where we anchor practice in law. To be a safe, ethical practitioner and one that an interviewer trusts, what are the non-negotiable legal anchors for UK adult social worker?
We have to focus on the critical triad of legislation because these laws, well, they provide the ultimate boundaries for your actions and your powers.
Okay, so what's number one?
First is the CARE Act 2014. Now, this isn't just an assessment framework. It actually establishes the local authority's duty to promote well-being and independence. And well-being is defined really broadly. It covers everything from personal dignity, control over daily life, to participation in society. This is your guiding star.
So when you're advocating for someone,
When you advocate for a service user, the CARE Act is your statutory shield.
and second, I'm guessing it's the capacity to make those choices.
Exactly. The Mental Capacity Act 2005, the MCA, you have to internalize the 5 key principles. The most fundamental one is this: assume capacity unless proven otherwise.
Right.
This means you must start from the position that every adult can make their own decision, no matter how unwise you might think it is.
And it's decision specific.
Crucially, yes, it is decision-specific. If a service user, let's call her Mrs. Jones, wants to stay home despite the risks, The question isn't, is Mrs. Jones generally capable, but does she have capacity regarding this specific decision to refuse the care home?
And if she doesn't,
If she lacks capacity, then and only then do you invoke the best interest principle, and you have to ensure the decision is the least restrictive option possible.
that specificity is a really high-value takeaway for an interview. And finally, safeguarding. What's the precise legal trigger for intervention?
The trigger is defined under the CARE Act, but the action is the Section 42 inquiry, or S-42. You initiate this when you have reasonable cause to suspect that an adult has needs for care, is at risk of abuse or neglect, and critically, is unable to protect themselves because of those needs.
Okay.
Knowing the legal term S-42 inquiry shows the panel you get that this isn't just some internal policy procedure. It is a statutory duty placed on the local authority to investigate.
And briefly, the sources also flag the associated role of the appropriate adult service, which, just to be clear, is about supporting vulnerable people during police interviews.
Correct. Specifically, people with learning disabilities or mental health challenges to ensure their rights are protected in that very specific setting.
So the framework gives you both your boundaries, the MCA and your statutory power, the CARE Act and S-42.
You need that robustness to practice ethically. Absolutely.
Okay, now that we've established the legal guardrails protecting the service user, let's look at the team you need to leverage to deliver on that statutory duty. The job emphasizes integration with PCNs. You can't be a lone wolf. You need the MDT, the multidisciplinary team. So who are the key players and what is the social worker's unique contribution?
The social worker in the PCN really acts as the linchpin. You're coordinating the social and legal elements to match the clinical needs.
Okay, so who are you working with day to day?
Well, starting with the health professionals.
Okay.
GPs handle the medical prognosis. They're critical for defining long-term conditions or confirming a lack of capacity. But you have district nurses. They handle the clinical needs at home wound care, medication management, that sort of thing.
So your job is to coordinate the social care around that.
Exactly. You coordinate the personal care, the meals, community access to make sure it all complements their clinical plan.
And what about the most crucial collaboration for independence?
That would be the occupational therapists, the OTs. They're absolutely vital. Where the district nurse assesses the wound, the OT assesses the environment. They look at equipment.
Hoists, stair lifts?
Yes, hoists, stair lifts, telecare sensors, pushing stools. By getting the right equipment installed, OTs directly reduce the need for human care hours. They dramatically promote a person's independence. A social worker who values the OT is a social worker who really understands independence.
And that brings us to the hyper-local specialists, which are, essential for navigating a rural setting like Somerset.
This is where you demonstrate that local knowledge. We talk about village agents or community connectors.
Yeah, yes.
They are the indispensable local experts. They know about all the non-formal support available in those remote villages.
Like the local lunch club.
Exactly. The lunch club, the neighbor who volunteers to drive people to appointments, the small local charity offering befriending services. The social worker's unique contribution here is combining all three layers: the legal framework, the clinical input from the GP or nurse, and the community assets from the village agent.
So without them, you're just putting in an expensive package.
You might be. With them, you build a sustainable local network.
That is such a comprehensive roster. And I love the practical interview tip from the sources. If you're asked who to involve in a complex case, show that comprehensive collaboration by always choosing at least 3 roles from different categories. Don't just say GP and nurse.
Right. Say GP, OT, and a village agent. Sure, you see the whole picture.
Let's move to application and scenario testing. So we have a scenario. Mrs. Green, 82, living alone in a remote village, high falls risk. The district nurse, who's completely overwhelmed, is recommending immediate residential care for her safety. This is a classic MDT conflict. What is the successful social worker's response?
The successful social worker has to demonstrate 2 things at the same time: advocacy and risk mitigation.
Right.
First, advocacy and legal backing. In that MDT meeting, the social worker must immediately cite the CARE Act. They have to stand up for Mrs. Green's wish to stay home by promoting her well-being and her control over her own life.
So you're challenging the purely medical recommendation.
You're challenging it by asking, what alternatives have we explored to mitigate this risk while respecting her choice?
So you're challenging the nurse, but you're immediately offering practical solutions.
Precisely. The successful response immediately leverages collaboration. You're seeking input from the OT for environmental adaptations, like sensors or rails. and integrating support from the village agent for daily volunteer check-ins and some social activity.
And crucially, you have to formalize that risk.
You absolutely do. The plan is documented as positive risk-taking. This means you acknowledge the risk. Yes, she might fall, but you balance that against the benefits.
Her autonomy, quality of life.
Exactly. And you document the mitigations put in place, the OT equipment, the community checks. And this plan is conditional on assessing her mental capacity regarding her choice. If she has capacity, and she understands that staying home means accepting some risk, her choice is paramount.
And that documentation is key.
Key. And ideally, it involves sign-off from your team manager to share that accountability.
That is a masterful demonstration of integrating law and practice.
Okay, now for the pressure cooker drill. It's 4 p.m. on a Friday. You're 30 miles out in a rural area. Your car won't start, and you get an urgent safeguarding concern about immediate harm to an adult. What's the priority, and what is your immediate action?
This is a test of your professional conduct under stress and your adherence to policy. The priority is twofold: the safety of the adult at risk and your own safety.
Right.
Your initial action must prioritize your safety using the lone working policy. You are stranded. You cannot guarantee a timely physical response.
So you don't panic. You don't panic, but you use the team. You must immediately call the team manager or the duty desk. You have all the essential details: the location, the nature of the immediate risk, who the perpetrator is, to the duty social worker. You're not abandoning the case. You're ensuring the statutory duty is met by the correct available resource for a physical response. It shows you know your boundaries and use professional channels for escalation.
Okay, we've covered philosophy, law, collaboration, and applied risk. Now let's focus on the polish. How do you turn good answers into winning answers in the interview? How do you move beyond the obvious to sound truly strategic?
We need to look at common interview traps. For example, the question, why Somerset Council? The trap is giving a generic answer about wanting to help people. The winning strategy is to mention specific local priorities.
Show you've done your homework.
Exactly. You win by mentioning their adoption of the neighborhood PCN model and your genuine interest in integrated care, or maybe their specific focus on using village agents. It shows you've researched their actual strategy.
Okay, next one. The biggest test for any social worker. How do you manage a heavy caseload?
Avoid saying you'll just work longer hours. That suggests poor boundaries and burnout waiting to happen.
So what's the winning answer?
The winning answer involves demonstrating a systematic approach. It means risk rating your cases. You'd explain that you categorize cases into red for immediate statutory urgency, like S-42 inquiries, amber for time-bound statutory work, like assessments, and green for preventative work and follow-up.
And use supervision.
And you state that you use structured, regular supervision with your manager to check that your red list aligns with the organization's priorities. You're using supervision as a professional tool, not just a box-ticking exercise.
That depth is fantastic. And of course, the perennial favorite, what are your weaknesses?
Avoid the cliche. Please avoid the I'm a perfectionist cliche. Win by mentioning a genuine area of professional development. Ground it in the social work England standards. For instance, I sometimes find it hard to step back emotionally from deeply complex cases, which can lead to boundary creep. Quote, I overcome this by explicitly using reflective supervision to process the case and maintain my professional boundaries. It shows reflection and a clear strategy for improvement.
And to finalize that professional polish, we have to ground this in the regulatory body. What standards should you be ready to articulate?
Well, every UK social worker has to be registered with Social Work England, or SWE. The panel is checking if you understand your ongoing duty to maintain fitness to practice. So be ready to articulate 3 key standards. First, CPD, continuing professional development. Mention how you stay updated, maybe by attending internal carnival of practice events. Second, promote the rights, strengths, and well-being. You state that you actively ensure the service user's voice is the loudest in the room, even when it conflicts with professional opinion. And third, promote ethical practice and report concerns. This reinforces that supervision is where you check your own biases and reflect on complex ethical decisions.
And the crucial closing move. Never, ever say no when they ask, do you have any questions for us?
Never. Your questions should show you're thinking strategically about the organization. Ask about the role of the practice development advanced practitioners within the team. That shows you researched the career progression. Or ask about the team's current focus on overcoming specific integration challenges with local PCNs. Something like, what's the biggest current blocker to information sharing between health and social care in this neighborhood?
So to summarize this entire strategic deep dive, just remember the logic flow we've covered. Independence is the goal. That goal is legally driven by the CARE Act, ethically guided by the NCA, and secured by knowing your powers under Section 42. This is applied daily using the strengths-based method, executed through the multidisciplinary team, protected by your loan working and risk rating policies. And finally, professionally maintained through your SWE registration and your commitment to CPD.
We really hope this gave you the dense, practical, and legally backed knowledge you need to walk into that interview with complete confidence, knowing you can speak to the strategy, not just the basics. Now, for our final provocative thought for you to take away. If a family member is physically blocking a social worker from seeing a vulnerable adult inside their home, what is the single legal term the social worker must calmly invoke to assert their power and secure access, demonstrating to the interviewer that you know exactly what legal tool you have in your belt?
The crucial nugget to take forward, the ultimate answer, is that the social worker must state that the local authority has a statutory duty to conduct a Section 42 inquiry under the CARE Act 2014. Invoking that specific legal duty means the intervention is not optional, it is mandated by law, and showing that understanding is a winning move for any candidate.